I think the era of fact-checking is either dead or dying. All right, let me explain why and why it's really important. So let's start with the news. In case you were on another planet or hiding under a pile of coats earlier this week, Meta, which owns Facebook and Instagram and Threads and WhatsApp, announced that they would no longer have third-party fact-checking. That they did so, they didn't think it was worthwhile or additive anymore, and they were walking away from it. Here's what Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook founding fame said about that decision. Let me quote him. "We've reached a point where it's just too many mistakes and too much censorship. The recent elections also feel like a cultural tipping point toward once again prioritizing speech. So we are going to get back to our roots, focus on reducing mistakes, simplifying our policies, and restoring free expression on our platforms." Now, what Facebook, Meta, is going to move to is something we believe that looks a lot like the community notes feature on Twitter/X. So you'll remember, when Elon Musk bought Twitter, he did lots of things. He slashed the staff, he changed the name to X, and he instituted something called community notes, where essentially the voice of the people, the collective wisdom and knowledge of the people, could append a fact check or a correction to any tweet. Now, is that a potentially dangerous thing? Sure, but I will say that in the limited studies of the efficacy of community notes, 98% of them are factually correct. So actually, there's some evidence that it's working, whether you like Elon Musk or not. Anyway, that's where Meta is moving. And I think it's really important to note that that is an absolute sea change from where Facebook and Twitter and all these other massive social media giants were a decade ago when fact-checking started to rise. I want to read something the Washington Post wrote. I thought this was really good context of where we were versus where we are. Here's what they wrote. "A decade ago, revelations that Russian operatives exploited Facebook and other social networks to divide Americans and boost Trump's 2016 presidential campaign sparked bipartisan pressure on tech giants to rein in fake news and information. The industry doubled down on fact-checking in 2021, including by banning Donald Trump from popular social media networks in response to charges that online activity had fueled both the January 6th insurrection and falsehoods about the coronavirus." Okay, so we're only 3 years on from that, but things have changed drastically. And the biggest thing that changed is Donald Trump won the election last November. So I think it is really important. I think this is a moment where we need to note that the Meta, X, other big sort of tech giants are saying they do not want to be associated with the business of fact-checking, that it's too hard to do, that it is seen as too partisan no matter what you do, that it's not effective from a cost perspective. And that has real and serious practical implications. So these tech companies, X, Facebook, etc., you know what they have? Lots and lots of money and lots of people. And they are getting out of the fact-checking business, which leaves fact-checking to the media, which has less and less people and less money, right? Even mainstream media, they are scaling back and shrinking. I think that is a really important moment, right? Because where we were, right, 2015, 2016, the rise of Donald Trump and Donald Trump's election heralded a sort of moment for fact-checking. As I read in that Washington Post excerpt, there was huge pressure on these tech companies to do fact-checking of their content. There was a clamor among the mainstream media to get fact-checkers on their payroll or to give them more prominence. CNN hired Daniel Dale from Canada. The Washington Post grew its fact-checking operation. I mean, every mainstream media company sought to sort of highlight their fact-checking, put it forward. The Washington Post kept track of all the things that Donald Trump said that weren't true during his first term, 30,000+ things. I mean, it's a massive endeavor that you could only do with real resources. But even before Trump won last November, there has been a decline in active fact-checking sites. Now, this is according to the Duke Reporters Lab. They did this study in last fall, so September of 2024. So, as recently as 2018, 2016, there were about 200 active fact-checking sites globally. That number surged to well over 400 or 450 by 2022. But in 2024, it shrunk to 442. And I think this is just going to continue to shrink as mainstream media organizations and other organizations either can't fund fact-checking or get out of the fact-checking business. I'll give you a few examples. Think of the last set of presidential and vice presidential debates. So we had 2 presidential debates and a vice presidential debate. CNN hosted the first debate between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. There was no fact-checking, no live fact-checking on camera done there, a conscious decision by CNN. CBS hosted the vice presidential debate between J.D. Vance and Tim Walz. They also purposely did not do live on-air fact-checking. You could click a QR code that took you to fact-checking, but the point is they didn't do it live on air. Now, ABC, in the second presidential debate, their moderators did do fact-checking of Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, or actually just Donald Trump, because they fact-checked him 4 times and Kamala Harris 0 times, which led to huge criticism from Republicans. I'll give you one example. This is Tom Cotton, the Arkansas Republican senator. He said it was 3-on-1. They continued to engage in so-called fact-checking of Donald Trump. They never did that to Kamala Harris. So, to me, you are seeing a couple things happen. One, companies, particularly tech companies, are trying to get on the right side of Donald Trump. And they're trying to get out. One of the ways that they're doing that is getting out of the fact-checking business. They probably didn't ever really want to get into it in the first place, to be totally honest. It's hard. It's not a great business, and it's really hard to do. And it's expensive. But they are getting out. So that's point one. And they're getting out, at least in part, to ingratiate themselves to Donald Trump. It's why they're donating to Trump's inaugural fund. It's why all these tech CEOs are going to Mar-a-Lago to meet with Donald Trump, right? So you have that. The other thing you have is mainstream media organizations are bad business. They are losing money, and they are going to be able to do less and less fact-checking as we go forward because they don't have the money to support it. So those two developments dovetail in a way that I think will lead to substantial reductions in fact-checking across the internet, obviously, but even in mainstream media news sites, I think you're going to see less and less fact-checking and resources available for fact-checking. Does that worry me? Absolutely. Do I think that some fact-checking goes overboard and is too liberal or too scoldy? Sure, absolutely. Do I think we as a society being able to agree on the notion of capital T truth and capital F facts matters? Yes. And do I think these decisions by Meta and X eroded that? I do think so a little bit. So anyway, all right. I am back. As you can see, I've got a new background. I'm trying out a few different backgrounds, but I got a new background, new camera. So I'm doing a few changes here and there. Let me know if you like them. I'm going to be doing a ton of content, including more live streams and more videos, short and long form. So stay tuned for that. I always ask you to do 4 things. I ask you to subscribe to this channel. Again, this year is a huge year, I think, for independent media, particularly in sites like through sites like YouTube for me. I'm going to be spending a lot of time on it. I hope you subscribe so that you can get all my content. Number 2, I ask you to like this video in particular. It helps with the algorithm. It helps get more of my content surfaced to people who don't know about it. So do that. Number 3, comment on this video, also for the algorithm. Look, we're all about the algorithm. And then number 4, if you can tell 5 to 10 friends about this channel, why you like it, why you think it's important, why I'm doing what I'm doing, I'd love it if you could. It'd mean a ton to me. All right, everyone, take care. I'll be back soon. Be well.